So if you got it to work, you should have seen that when you are in the app and you do snap a pic, the device switches over to a camera, and it has some of the features of the camera, and you can turn it around, selfie, whatever. So I assume I took a photo of the item, and then you can cancel it or accept it. And if you're keeping an eye out on your console over here, it's saying a few things. In my case over here, function picture is running. App was paused. So when I went over to take a photo, it went to another kind of app. And so my main app kind of went behind the scenes. If I say that I like that photo and come back to my app, I see app was resumed. So right now there were a couple of events that happened. The app resumed, app was paused. Just pointing that out to you that we had, remember those functions, on pause, on resume. So there is a moment that we leave the app to a different app, and then we come back to our app. So I came back to my app, and when I got back here, that input field now, in my case, has a path, and it says file /storage /android /whatever, and then the date.jpg. So there is an actual JPEG file in that path there, and that's getting saved to the database. Ultimately, when I click save. Now, when I then retrieve, so I've got one comic saved so far, and then I view it, I see half the picture in my case. I never specified how big to show the photo and such. And if I look at it carefully, in my case, it looks very pixelated and low quality. I wonder why my photo was such low quality. Yes, 10 out of 100, 10%. So, for testing purposes, to see if it worked, and you got a photo, great, it works. The quality's horrible. I hope you don't turn your final project in like that, with 10% quality. And the other thing about the size of it, let's deal with the size. Right now, the photo, it's getting too big for the area that it's in. Well, that's just a little CSS that we can do to resize it. Let's fix this so that in the CSS it behaves. And just like most things in the code, there's several ways to do it. But here's one possible way. We've got the photo appears. The photo appears because it's inside of an image, inside of a paragraph. We need to write a CSS selector to target the image in this paragraph. A couple of ways to do it. Well, what if I added an ID here? Well, if this is the only place that I'm going to display this image, an ID would be fine. Remember, you can only use an ID one time. But we've got another attribute that instead could be used multiple times. Class. So we could use a class. We could attach a class to this image and then write the CSS code that says this image fit it properly. Okay, so it's either class or ID. That's one way. Another way, because ultimately we need to write some sort of selector to select that thing, we have already a sort of a sort of way to do it in the example over here. Where we stored it in the database. This is could be also a valid selector. This is saying the same thing. When we write our CSS, go find a div with a certain name. Inside of that div is a paragraph. The 7th paragraph has an image, and then we can resize the image. So we've got those two ways. Either jump directly right now to the CSS and we have a possible selector to use, or edit the HTML file to add an extra class or ID and then write the CSS. Both give you the same result. I'm going to call it the long way, the short way. The long way is writing the long thing here. The short way is writing the class. Let's vote. Who would like to do the long way? No one? No one wants to write the long way like that? Who would like to do the short way? Okay, do the short way then. Which is the correct way? They're all correct, they're all incorrect. It's just whatever makes sense. This might make sense to me here if I use the long way. Oh, I know that it's a certain image in a certain paragraph. Now, the thing that could be wrong about that is it's only going to be one image in one part of the app in the 7th paragraph. If we use the class, we could use the same code 10 times in our app. So in that sense, it could be right or wrong. Let's say we'll do then the way that people wanted the short way. We'll do the class. Let's go back to the index.html and let's add a class there. And we'll call this, I don't know, maybe pick thumbnail, pick style, whatever. We just need some sort of class attached here. This has a class, some name. Let's open up the CSS file. We haven't worked with that one in a little while. In the CSS folder, index.css. We'll go to the end of our code. We have a brand new class to work with of 100%. Well, it's already too big. It's already popping out outside of my screen here. As we can see here, I only see half of it. I'm putting 100%. Well, it's already 100% big. Why might 100% actually work? That's 100% of the parent container. Exactly. The parent container is a paragraph that already fits within the boundaries of this div. So we're saying resize this image to be 100% the size of its parent, which is this paragraph in the div. So now we're saying that. Maybe this could have a little note here. You can say resize the image or the photos we captured by a camera plugin. Alright, so you can save it, you can run it. You already saved a comic, so all you have to do is go to just view comic, and it should have the CSS kick in. The original graphic is still the 1024 size, but then we're just resizing it to the size of the container here. And on a tablet where it's this size, well, the 100% will look nice. And then if I load the same app on a smaller screen, 100% will still resize it to fit within the boundaries of the container. Make sure you write 100%, not 1,000. You crashed our computer?
4 times for me. Just kill it and then do it again.
You crashed the school power. You might have hit a keyboard shortcut or something, so we cancel it, because that's going into your settings to change that. Yeah. Like I'm saying, you might have done it instead of doing save all on the keyboard, you might have hit it wrong and then Control-Shift-X or something. Alright, so try running that just to confirm that the size of that. Yes, because what's happening is there's already a picture that exists. When we go to view comics, it just loads the picture. The new CSS then says resize these pictures to fit, so it already is the right size, and it'll just resize it. I mean, it's already the original size, and it'll just resize it. So right here, I didn't take any new picture, it's the same picture, I went back to view comic, and it resizes it. It still looks horrible and pixelated. That one cannot be fixed by changing the value of 10 over here. This was applied at the moment that we took the photo. So if I change this back to 100 or 90 or whatever, this is for future photos that I take. So when it resized down, it doesn't look so bad. But I don't recommend for the final project to leave that at 10. If you want to change these values, you could change these values as well. These might be also a little low quality and also contributing to the pixelated view of your results.
Why don't you change?
Why don't you change? You're going to turn it in. You're going to be graded. Not me. I gave myself an A+. So, we put the class in the HTML file when we had our... What's the question?
The class that we just used for the picture, we used the vertical.
In the CSS file, right here. Okay, so the next idea is the social sharing plugin. We have one more item to add to our project, which adds the ability to connect to Twitter, to LinkedIn, all of those social apps. And that same plugin also gives us the ability to send an email. One use case for that is that a person sends us an email from the app to us, or we give them a way to send an email to someone else, like, hey, check out this amazing app. You know, you can set it up so that it can send an email to one of their friends or contacts with a link to our app, let's say. So the way we will do this is in the... Oh, it's already there. In the options screen, we haven't seen the options in a while. Remember, options we have contact us and share. So these two buttons, contact and share, I want these to do something. I want them, if a person clicks contact us, it'll send us an email, you, the developer, like with a question or a concern or praise or whatever. And then with share, in this case, share will pop up, and then a screen will pop up allowing them to share or to tweet over to Twitter or Facebook or whatever. Now this works by what apps are on the device. If the person in their device has Twitter, Twitter will be one of the options that appears to share to. If they don't have it, then it's not in the menu. It's not going to share to Twitter. If you're borrowing one of our tablets, I don't remember what's on them exactly. If you want to confirm, you can go over to the View All Apps screen. And in my case, I see Twitter. I guess just Twitter. So whatever is installed on the device, you'll be able to share to. And in order for this to work, let's do this. So I just need to confirm in the index HTML. So a while ago on the index HTML, we did create contact us button, share button. These are plain old HTML links with data roles of button. They're not in a form, they're just links that have been upgraded to be buttons, and the href points nowhere. But these have IDs. So let's create the variables for these, or we might have already done it. Let's check our JavaScript. Okay, looks like we did do that also. A little section of miscellaneous buttons. We have L button contact us and L button share. Okay, so we already have those. We need the event listeners so that when we press the share button, we'll start the feature to share. Let's go to the end of our code and set ourselves up with an event listener for BTN share. So LBTN share on click, run the function share, and so if we're referencing a function to share, we will then create that function. Let's create a new function called share and write the code to make it share. Function to share to social media depends on apps on their device. So there's the usual scaffolding of this. We've got the click, run a function. There's our function. It's cutting off on the edge there. But this is the function share, the usual just little console message to give ourselves some feedback that it's doing something. And then we will make it do something. We will make it activate a new feature of the device, of the app, to be able to tap into the apps that exist on the device. Well, when we did barcode and camera before, I said, remember, you've got the user-facing stuff, buttons or whatever, and then you've got the back-end stuff, which is the code to make it work. But in between those two, there's one thing that we're missing before we go further. The plugin. This is not anything built into JavaScript or jQuery, and this is not built into our camera plugin. This is not built into our barcode plugin. We need a plugin then for social sharing. And as usual, there's many of them, but let's get one that I've recommended for the class. Go to your web browser and just do a search for Cordova Social Sharing Plugin. So there's many apps, usually multiple apps that do the same thing. As long as it does what you need it and it's not full of viruses, you're fine. This one here is the one I've used before. It's this result right here by this developer, Eddie Verbruggen. That's the one we want. At github.com, etc., here. Eddie Verbruggen, that's the one we want. If you're getting it from elsewhere, it might not be the same thing that I need here. Here's someone else's from some other developers. So maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. I don't know. I haven't seen all of them. I'm using the one that I've used before. So the top result should be that one, the from Eddie Verbruggen. So this takes us over here to GitHub. And if we scroll down, okay, all the files are there, but let's scroll down. So PhoneGap, aka Cordova. Remember those words are synonymous. If you ever see any documentations or plugins or whatever called PhoneGap, they work with Cordova. They work with what we have. There's the documentation. So what this does is it lets you share a link, text, images, like PDFs or whatever. It lets you, attach files from a local system or off of a server. You can share directly to Twitter or let the user pick, I want to share this to LinkedIn. So it also can, this same plugin then will also work when we want the email. Send an email to the developer, send an email to someone else. A few screenshots. So in iPhone it looks something like this. You press a button on iOS, it pops up for a list of possible apps and so forth. I'm about to tweet from my app. Okay, I'm about to post to Facebook from my app. What you post there, of course, we can set that, etc., etc. How does it look on Android, etc. So it'll look something like that. However, the Android interface will look, it'll pop up with a list of apps that exist that are compatible. And then over here, they're about to tweet from the app, etc. So scrolling down, installation. This is the one that I mentioned at the beginning of the day, that the latest version of it doesn't seem to quite work with our app for some reason. So we need a slightly previous version. And then to get it to work, keep scrolling. How do you use it? Okay, if we scroll down, how do we use it? We have what is known as the sharing sheet, which is the little screen that pops up with all the possible apps and stuff. But ultimately we have window.plugins.social sharing, and if we want to open up the version of the share so that it lets you pick, share with options, and then you feed it the options, the success, the error. So, okay, so this one's slightly different here. It's got options first, then success, then error. So just another way that they do it. And on this one, there's going to be some message, subject, are there any files attached? Is there a link attached? What would you like that little pop-up to be called if you're dealing with iPad and such, other things? There's other examples over here. I don't like that they have an inline JavaScript as their example. They shouldn't even show that, because then people want to do this, and you want to avoid inline JavaScript, just like you want to avoid inline CSS. But this says that you can directly do a window.plugin.socialsharing.share message only, and then it will only share a message and besides the other things. Question? What's that?
What can you use?
We want to avoid the inline code, because then when we need to maintain it and change it later, it's a little harder to find where the code is. If you're writing all of your JavaScript code in a JavaScript file, you can find what you need there. If you're looking for your CSS code in the CSS file, you'll find it. But then when you mix up HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in the wrong file, you're going to have a harder time finding it. So, code maintenance, clarity of your code, separation of concerns, in that each file is supposed to be about something, are the reasons why you want to put each thing in its own place. Let's see, sharing directly, Facebook. Okay, so we need to do this, but in order for this to work, we need to install the plugin. Let's go back to our Visual Studio. Let's go back to the place where we install plugins, config XML. plugins, custom. So if we just use the ID that the website gives us, it'll give us the latest version of the code, which I checked it an hour before class, and it doesn't work. We need, instead of version 3.5, we need 3.4. So we have local. We can give it a folder of the plugin code. So let's set this to local. We'll go back to the GitHub site, back here, go all the way to the top. Right after the kissing people right here, we see branch. We're looking at the master, the most current version of the code. Right underneath this 500 commits, this is near the top. Underneath 500 commits, let's click on branch master, and then what browser are you in? I'm going to switch over to another browser. It wasn't opening on mine either. Okay, I'm going to go to Chrome. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, maybe that's what that big message is at the...
Text. You did it right. Just no, push master, and after that push.
That's what I'm saying. The box doesn't even open. But here's why. At the top here, please note, GitHub no longer supports old versions of Firefox. Whoops, I guess we have an old version of Firefox. Okay, so if it... in Chrome. So if it's not popping up, let's switch over to Chrome. So here we go. When you're in Chrome and you go here and you click on master, it pops up right here, and we switch over to tags. These get tagged with different versions. So instead of branches, go to tags on that branch. So we're just going to scroll down to 5.4.0. I know that it worked on this one. It might have worked on a newer one, a 5.4x, whatever, but I know it works on this one. If you want to test it for these other ones and see if it's got extra features, you can do so. I know it's on this. I know this one will work. So click on that 5.40. And now here it says, okay, we're dealing with the code of 540. The address up at the top also says we're in 540. Okay, then we've got to download. So make sure you're in 540, then click download and click download zip. Or is that going to give us... No, that's still giving us just the master. Okay, so download zip. We need to unzip this zip file. You don't need to keep this file. You can download it again later if you want, or you can keep this file if you want, but we need to unzip it, and then we will integrate it with our Visual Studio. So wherever it downloaded to, you need to extract it. And extract it to my desktop, in my case. So make sure from your zip file you extracted the file. This is the folder we're going to point to in Visual Studio. Make sure you're unzipped. And sometimes...
Are they extracting to desktop too?
Wherever you want to extract it to, yes. I'm putting it on the desktop to find it easily. So I'm extracting. Now, sometimes what I see when I extract is that I have a folder, and then in the folder I have another folder. So to confirm that this will work, whatever we've extracted, when I open the folder, I want to see that those files offer from GitHub. If I open a folder and there's another folder inside of it, just make a note of that there's a folder in a folder. I wanted to see all of this stuff about here, git, ignore, license, and so forth. I've extracted the folder. So back on Visual Studio, local. So we're in plugins, we're custom, we're local. browse to the local plugin you want to install. Click the three dots. And in my case, this exported, see, this is what I'm saying right here. I extracted, and I see it on the desktop, but what's in that folder is another folder. We need to point it to your folder where the subfolders are the www folder and so forth. So if you select that one, it'll just say can't find it. Make sure it's, if you select the top one, it'll say you can't find it. Make sure you select the one in it, if you get two like mine. So they're named the same thing for some reason, but it's got to be the second one, the one with which has these subfolders in here. Okay, so it should have then found 540. If it says cannot find config XML, like I'm saying, it's got to be the one inside. If I just select this top level, see, there's no config XML. It's got to be the one that is extracted on the lower level, 540. Click Add.
So they may be custom, click on custom
And then Local.
local.
Local, yes. And then click the three-dot menu to find the folder.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
We download the zip, we extract it, and it's sitting on our C drive.
Yeah.
But our program, our app is off of our thumb drive. Once we install this, is it being installed into Visual Studio, or is it being installed onto our thumb drive when we save it?
It's being installed onto the thumb drive. The files of the app are being added to your project on your thumb drive.
So even though we save it to C, and right now in Visual Studio, we're loading it from C, when we save it to the thumb drive, it will have that plug-in and all the requirements?
Yes. So that's what I said earlier about that. You don't need the zip file after you download it because it's going to get integrated into your project.
I was just wondering if we had to install to Visual Studio from the thumb drive for the file path and the same.
No, you can install it from wherever that zip folder is. Yes. Which is just what.
You choose from
Just one moment. I saw one hand. Just one moment. Question here.
I'm just wondering, what folder would it be
In your project folder,
yeah.
somewhere inside of the res. No, where is it? Merges. I don't think we see the folder in Visual Studio. You would see the folder in an Explorer window. So it's going to be in there somewhere in like bin or build or plugins. Does that make sense? Plugins. Oh yeah, there it is there. Yeah, that's easy. Okay, so yeah, the extracted code gets added to a brand new folder in the plugins folder. We don't see this folder inside of Visual Studio. I'm outside on a regular folder, and I see it right there. We got a brand new one, social sharing. Okay, so we have the. Now we have the plugin. You can confirm that under installed, we have a new plugin. Social sharing. So if you get back to our JS file, our JavaScript, in our share function, window.plugins.social sharing, lowercase, .share. So the .share is a brand new method that we have, a brand new command. It's related to the social sharing object that we've added to the project. Now we've had before window.alert. Here's something new, window.plugins.social sharing. Reading the documentation, this is set up in a very specific way, and there's multiple ways for this to work. So I'm going to break it to a couple of lines for it to be readable. I'll write some notes like before. We have something, well, all of these are basically going to be this quote, comma, and then right here we have message, which is a string. This expects there to be a string here. It could be numbers, but it's going to be text. It's going to be a string. This is the message. Let's say if I'm sending this to Twitter, this is the main body of the tweet. If I'm sending this to Facebook, it's the main content of the message. If I'm sending it to LinkedIn, I believe you can do there a title of a post and then the actual post. But this gives you the spot for a message. We then have a spot for subject, which is a string, which is optional, depending on the app or the network. Based on the app. So if I'm using this to share to, or it's not the right word, but to send an email, to share to an email, the subject of the email could be filled in here. There are no subjects on a tweet, there are no subjects on a Facebook post, so it'll be ignored. So it's an empty quote. And we've got brackets, quotes. What does brackets mean? Brackets are an array. Brackets are a collection of elements, and this is attachments, array of strings. So if I want to attach a photo, I'm going to tweet and attach a photo, like the photo of the comic that I took. I could have the path to the photo here. I could have more than one attachment, depending on the network. Next we have another string, which is a URL. Could add a link. And after this we have our success or failure. And then no final comma. I'll make a note up here. If you omit any field below, add null. So if you're not going to add an address to what you're sharing, you would put null. If you are going to put an address here, then you put something like that. So here's kind of what I want to do with this. Let's say the share from here is someone has your app and they really like it and they want to tell their friends and family about it on Facebook or Twitter. We can set it up. They click that share and it'll pop up. Okay, you're about to share to Facebook or Twitter or whatever. What do you want to say there? So just as this example, I'm saying here the message is, check out the CBDB app. Subject, on some sharing platforms there would be a subject, on others there wouldn't. So what I'm putting here, I might think about it as maybe most people won't see it, but some people will. So if we auto-populate it here, whatever network or sharing platform uses this field will use it, and those that don't use it will just ignore it. Okay, the attachment, I have a picture that I want to attach that's in my app right now, in the app, in the images folder. We've got a few images, you probably have your own. But this needs to be, it needs to start off with www. If you're referencing a picture that's inside of the app, you need to include www. Then I have an images folder. Right? Inside of my www folder, I have an images folder, and then the name of the image. Yeah, I would rather show like the logo of my app. However, the logo of my app is in the res folder, and you cannot write res/icon/android/whatever. You would need a copy of your app's icon in your www folder. So it's like download the CBDB app, and then it's a path to your icon in your images folder of your www folder. And there's a link about go check out the website. For failure and success, I'm just going to do some quick console output. There is a success that occurred or a failure that occurred. Console log. I'll say share success. Console log. Share failure. I'm using one variation of this social sharing plugin. The documentation of it, it's pretty in-depth about different ways to share, different ways to use this plugin. I'm setting it up so that when the person clicks share, they'll get a pop-up with all possible ways to share, and then these fields will get auto-populated with what we wrote here. The same plugin could be used to then do the contact us, where the idea is I want that directly that the person clicks contact us, it pops up only the email app, Gmail, for example. It pops up email and Gmail, and it automatically populates the message body, which they can of course change, and then the subject. It attaches an image, it adds a link, and then failure success. So right now, this app gives the user the option for them to select any app. The same plugin can be used to only target a certain app like Twitter, Facebook, or your email client. Let's test if this one works, and then we'll talk about the other button, the Contact Us. So this is what this needs. We've got the plugin installed, we've got the buttons installed. That is, we've got the buttons on the screen, we've made variables out of them, we've got the plugin installed, we've written the code. We're using one of the facets of this plugin. And if you run it, this is another example that this is going to be best that you run it on a real device, because the real device has actual apps to use. I'm not sure how it looks on Visual Studio, what way. It probably just a simple pop-up that asks what sort of response do you want to give, kind of like when we did the barcode scanner. So you can save all and run it, and then check it on a device. Okay, so I'll get back to the code one moment. I pressed it, and here's the last spot. I clicked the share button. Function is running. App was paused because it changed views for a moment. You can see here on this device, it popped up the possibilities. I can share it to Gmail. I have Twitter on this device, so I have Twitter. If yours doesn't have Twitter installed, you won't see Twitter. But I see also Hangouts and Maps, Google Maps. So, for example, if I select Gmail, it switches over to the Gmail app, and I'm about to send an email. Who it's from is whatever account is on the device, so that's filled in. Who it's going to is not filled in because it doesn't know who I want to email. But the subject is filled in. Download CBDV today, and then check out the app. That other line is there, and then it's got a photo attached to the email. And then so the way to fully get this tested is I can put in an email address, send it, so the output that I'm seeing here, app was resumed. The documentation says that usually you'll get, even when it works, you'll get a weird error that says share success false. We are getting the success. It's saying the word success because it triggered the success part. It triggered the success part right here. It says the word share success. But the documentation says that sometimes what's in success is the word failure, but it triggered success. So if it did that, that worked. If instead I click share and select Twitter, I'm going to select to do a tweet. Well, I don't have Twitter really set up on this thing, but it went to the Twitter app and it's going to say you're in Twitter, you're going to do a little tweet and attach. It's going to automatically fill in what you wrote here, message string. It'll attach a photo to the tweet and the link. So this is like great for self-promotion. In our app, in the options, there's a you like our app? Well, tell your friends about it. That's what the idea is on this. Share it to your friends and family. On the simulator, just to see what that looks like.
Whatever it's doing, it's not letting me log into
Your app itself?
the app itself. I'm trying to log in, it's just stuck on the home page. No, it's not even.
We'll check that in a moment. So here in the browser, I clicked Share, and back on Visual Studio, it says, okay, well, what do we do with this? You click the Share button, and then it looks like that. So on this one, and it says you're about to attach a picture and do all that good stuff. Here, I'm not exactly sure. I never really tested it here because this really doesn't work that great on the simulator. So I'm sure it expects something about, like, I don't know, something like that, success true. Maybe. So I'm not really going to test it on Visual Studio. This would be something to test on a real device. Because what do we get here? Share success, object, I guess. So did something.
I got share with Maps, Bluetooth, Gmail, Hangouts.
Oh, good. So it's showing the apps that are on that device that it can tap into. So as long as you get that, if you try to click one of those, tap one of those and see what's the next screen, whatever you filled into that code, it should show up somewhere in where you're about to save it or share it to. Now, the plugin, we did one version of it where it was allowing the user to, this is the one we did, the share method, the generic share method. There's a share to Twitter, share to Facebook, share to email. So, in the documentation, there's a way to share to email. What we're going to do, though, is there's that final button, contact us, to email you, the developer, which does nothing. But it's going to be based on this share plugin. And the share plugin has the explanation of how you would set this up for email. So I'm not going to do the lecture on that, but it will be required that you get that contact button working. That contact button is, again, everything we did today, just one more time. There's a button that needs to be clicked on. There needs to be a variable. There needs to be a function that you click on. After the event of clicking on it, there needs to be an event listener. There needs to be a function that runs. That function is going to be full of some variation of the documentation's example. So you'll read that on your own to see how that works. It's in the social sharing plugin version 5.4.0. There's a little how to do it, because again, if you're in the class and I'm walking you through it, okay, cool, you seem to get it working in class. But then when you're outside of the class is over next week. And then when you want to do this on your own and add more to it and do more to it, you're going to need to do that. You're going to need to look up documentation, try it, trial and error, and get it to work. And based on previous semesters, people have gotten that one to work. Based on what we've done so far, it's just another variation of what we did twice already today and other days of the class in this past whole month. So should not be the basic skeleton of it should not be new. The only new is the variation that we're going to use this plugin to send an email, and the documentation and example is there. So we're going to end the lecture at this point. We're going to do lab time. You've got in the network folder, you've got the study guide, which is also on Canvas, and it has the links to everything that we need. There's the link again to the social sharing / email plugin, the link to the full documentation for photos. Together we made photos work. We did social. We made that one work. You need to read up on it and practice to make email work, because that will be required for the final to get that working. You're going to need to have your own certificate file. You're going to then need to run the app on a real device. I'm going to run through your app and look for everything that I'm going to have on my checklist. And on that last day, next Tuesday, you'll have one handful of pizza and the other hand coding to finish up your final code. And that'll be the final day. General questions?
Can you upload the code?
That's the question that I will say no. For the final one, our lecture is what's going to guide you. I'm not going to give the final code of what we did today. I can put it up on screen, but then it's the time for you to get it to work with my help, with your classmates' help, but I'm not going to share the code to the folder this time.